Good evening, everyone. I'm Linsey Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. We learned today that about 140 U.S. service members have been wounded since the start of the war in Iran. That includes 8 seriously injured and is in addition to the 7 U.S. service members killed. The Pentagon called today the most intense day of strikes since the war started and said U.S. forces had hit more than 5,000 targets. Iran continues to threaten the flow of oil tanker traffic in the Strait of Hormuz. Today, President Trump warned Tehran against laying mines in that waterway and threatened to blow up any ship attempting to do so. Iranian leaders remain defiant, though, even after days of heavy strikes. Tehran launched new attacks against Israel and Gulf Arab countries. Sirens sounding in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv as Israeli air defenses work to intercept the barrage of missiles, rockets, and drones. We heard today from both Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. Each re-emphasized the resounding success, as they described it, that the U.S. was having in Iran, but did not specify a clear timeline or end date for U.S. operations there. ABC's chief foreign correspondent Ian Pannell leads us off from the region again tonight.
Tonight, the Pentagon saying today would be the most intense day of the war so far, amid serious questions over the shifting timelines. 24 hours ago, President Trump said of the war, quote, "It's very complete, pretty much," later adding, "It's pretty well complete." The president making those comments amid extreme volatility in the oil markets. But tonight, it's very clear this war is raging on.
We will not relent until the enemy is totally and decisively defeated. But we do so on our timeline and at our choosing.
Late today, amid reports Iran's now planning to lay mines in the Strait of Hormuz, where tankers carry 20% of the world's oil, the president now says the U.S. completely destroyed 10 inactive mine-laying boats. The president warning Iran the military consequences of mining the strait will be at a level never seen before. President Trump fully aware the war on Iran has led to shock over skyrocketing oil prices globally and gas prices in the U.S.
The U.S. military is drawing up additional options following the president's directive to continue keeping the Strait of Hormuz open. I will not broadcast what those options look like, but just know the president is not afraid to use them.
But tonight, Iran issuing a direct threat to the president, saying, "Be careful not to get eliminated yourself." And today, confusion over whether the U.S. Navy had escorted a ship through the dangerous strait. A post with video from Energy Secretary Chris Wright said the U.S. Navy successfully escorted an oil tanker through the Strait of Hormuz. But then, about 30 minutes later, that social media post was deleted. The department blaming staff for a, quote, incorrect caption. The White House says it never happened. And tonight, the human toll on American service members and their families. The Pentagon now confirming at least 140 American service members have been injured so far in this war. 8 severely wounded. ABC News learning new details about the Iranian drone strike that killed 6 U.S. soldiers in Kuwait. A source telling ABC News the soldiers there had taken shelter in a bunker as air defense systems intercepted a wave of Iranian drones. But moments after the all-clear was given to return to their work building, a drone slamming into the structure. And for the first time tonight, we're hearing from one of the surviving soldiers inside that building. Minnesota Army Sergeant First Class Corey Hicks.
I remember hearing a buzzing noise that got louder and louder, like really quickly.
Hicks describing the harrowing moments before that deadly drone came crashing in.
I remember turning my head to the left and I seen the nose of that drone pop through. And as soon as it did, I knew what it was. It was either a missile or a drone. So I turned to my right, and that's when it blew up and just blew the whole building apart.
The married father with young children of his own recovering from serious shrapnel injuries and a severed spleen, speaking to ABC affiliate KSTP from his hospital bed at Walter Reed, remembering one of the service members who did not survive, Master Sergeant Nicole Amore.
She was literally 5 feet from me when that happened. When I looked over my left shoulder, the drone impacted basically right above her. She was just the kindest woman ever. She was very caring and willing to go the extra mile for you.
And as this war takes a toll on service members, with no clear timeline set, influential podcaster Joe Rogan questioning why we're in the war in the first place.
It just seems so insane based on what he ran on. I mean, this is why a lot of people feel betrayed, right? He ran on no more wars and these stupid, senseless wars, and then we have one that we can't even really clearly define why we did it.
Our thanks to Ian. We'll have more of his reporting later in the show. And as gas prices are rising across the country, this despite a slight drop in oil prices, ABC's Diane Macedo had a chat today with AAA to give us an idea of why that is.
Axia, oil prices are down, but gas prices are still rising. Why?
Yeah, they're going up. So this is the time of year when gas prices would go up naturally. And that's something to remember. This Iran conflict is coinciding with the time of year when spring break season kicks off, which means gasoline demand goes up and prices go up. Also, summer blend gasoline will hit the market soon, and that's more expensive to produce. So that cost is passed down to the consumers. We're paying about the same as we were in the summer of 2024. We are still nowhere near, though, the highs of 2022. After the Russia-Ukraine conflict began, that early spring time, we saw prices spike 60 cents in 1 week, and then they stabilized but kept going up incrementally until we peaked at $5 for the national average, of $5 a gallon. That's the highest it's ever been. We're not there yet. Could we get there? You cannot predict gas prices because they're so volatile. And even what we've seen the past 24 hours, when we saw the price of crude oil go up beyond $100 a barrel, now it's back down to the 80 range. It fluctuates daily. It's too volatile to predict. But again, this is the time of year when higher gas prices are to be expected.
Except gas prices typically increase around this time of year anyway because of spring break.
Yeah.
So how do you know whether the surge we're seeing right now is due to the war or if it's just the routine increase in demand?
A good question. And you watch crude oil prices. So that's very telling, right? Because even if crude oil prices were in the, let's say, $50, $60 range, which is what we saw in 2025, you're still going to see that curve in the spring, summer, because demand's going up and gas prices naturally go up. But when you see crude oil prices hitting $90, $100 or beyond a barrel, then you know it's in direct correlation with what's happening globally. This is a global market. So even though we don't import fuel and gas and oil from Iran, there's a ripple effect, and that's why we're feeling it here at home. So you never know exactly which day, how much you're paying. Does it have to do with geopolitical tensions? Does it have to do with domestic demand? It's all sort of one package, but we do know that this is the time of year when gas prices go up because demand is rising as the weather is warming up and more people are traveling.
And Aixa, what are you watching for next?
Yeah, so we definitely watch for the fact that demand is going up, so we know that consumers and drivers are going to want to save at the pump. And I think this is the time when you have to be mindful. And when you're pulling into a gas station, actually pay attention to what the gas is. Sometimes people are like, how come that was so expensive? They didn't look up to see how much it was. But also sign up for any fuel rewards. Gas stations offer this. AAA partners with Shell. You can save at least 5 cents a gallon every time you pump. Those little savings add up. But also, have your vehicle maintained. Make sure your tire pressure is good. That helps with fuel economy. And also weight. When you have stuff in the back seat of your car, the trunk, maybe you've been driving around with donations, you've been procrastinating, drop those off because the more weight in your vehicle, the more your vehicle has to work and fuel economy won't be as efficient.
Our thanks to Diane Macedo. And now to more of that exclusive interview with the U.S. soldier who survived an Iranian drone attack in Kuwait, which killed 6 U.S. service members with a severed spleen, lacerated kidney, shrapnel injuries, and facial fractures. Army Sergeant First Class Corey Hicks detailed a devastating attack from his hospital room at Walter Reed with a reporter from our ABC partner station KSTP in Minneapolis. Hicks says that he never expected war to come to Kuwait and that his experience is a reminder to appreciate the ones you love.
And I remember turning my head to the left and I seen the nose of that drone pop through. And as soon as it did, I knew what it was. It was either a missile or a drone. So I turned to my right, and that's when it blew up and just blew the whole building apart. Kind of looked around and I saw everything was just smoke and fire and crazy and chaos.
His wife, Shannon, is also a reservist. She said they'd been texting each other before the attack until they said goodnight.
She was literally 5 feet from me when that happened. I think when I looked over my left shoulder, the drone impacted basically right above her.
Shannon says that her husband is still alive, and that's all she could ever ask for. Coming up, our Ian panel explores the voices of the Iranian opposition. That in-depth report is next. Welcome back, everyone. With the war in Iran now in its second week, some Iranians have taken to the streets to express their support for the new supreme leader. Crowds chanting "Death to America" and "Death to Israel." These images are a major contrast from the Iranians celebrating in the streets after the death of Ayatollah Khamenei. Tonight, while many of those voices may be silent publicly, ABC News has been obtaining voice memos from Iranians who hope for a future without the Islamic Republic. Our chief foreign correspondent, Ian Pannell, has their stories.
It was around 1 a.m. All the people in my neighborhood, they were screaming, they were shouting, and it was like a celebration, and everybody was shouting "Death to Khamenei," and we were so happy.
And I saw that it's confirmed. He is dead after this many being killed and this much suffering in the region. They are a cancerous cell, they have to be removed. And there was no other way.
After months of protesting, risking their lives, of calling for the downfall of the regime, the news came like a thunderbolt. The supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, had been killed.
A short time ago, President Trump confirming Iran's supreme leader is dead.
Hope was rekindled for the tens of thousands still mourning those murdered by the regime during protests earlier this year. ABC News has been trying to connect with Iranians on the ground to get a sense of what their life has been like since the war began. Those who sent messages remain anonymous, and some voices altered for their safety. When the war began, the regime once again cut off internet and communications across the country, controlling its people along with their messages of resilience.
I think it was the second day of the war when they were hitting the state television headquarters and Tehran's IRGC base. I actually woke up thinking that was an earthquake that hit Tehran.
We are hopeful, and we are waiting for the day that this country will be free. To be honest, the life is not how it used to be, but the supermarkets, the grocery stores are open, and we have electricity, we have running water, and we hear the attacks like every 3 or 4 hours, and some days maybe less. But I can say the sound, it keeps us going. We are grateful for this opportunity, and we are waiting for the day that we can go out to the streets and get back our country from the Islamic regime.
We check the news, we try to keep the connection to the satellite TVs and by the phone, although we are in a total blackout, and the slightest connection that we have is very insecure, but we try to be informed.
President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu have both encouraged the Iranian people to rise up when the bombing stops. But the security forces are still in control of the streets, angry at the supreme leader's death and US-Israeli attacks.
It's very scary because they all have guns, and they are very furious now because they have lost the supreme leader, and we are very happy about that. We celebrate it, we drink, and we have parties in our houses, but it is very, very dangerous outside. Everybody from the regime and IRGC has the gun. Most of them are very ugly and furious, and they have free will to shoot everybody.
A woman who was in Tehran during the first week of the war telling us her home was close to a few regime targets, and as the attacks went on, the days got darker.
The house was shaking. I don't know, a few seconds later when they finally hit the target, and the blast wave was so strong that the doors and windows frames were about to fall out of their place, and it was very, very, very scary. The atmosphere in Tehran is much, much scarier than the first days now, and many people are scared. I really, really think that the conditions are getting harder every day for those who stayed in Tehran.
We are worried that maybe this war stops before the complete regime change, and we want this war as a help, as Mr. Trump has promised us.
I hope people would come inside and see Iran and enjoy, and we can show them the true Persian, hospitality. I want the world to know that the whole Iran situation is caused by 47 years of Islamic Republic ruling. Started with Khomeini.
People were anticipating these attacks and understood the cost. I know it's sad, but people were in favor of this attack and still are. The mission is clear, a free Iran. And I assume by now everyone knows this deeply entrenched, heavily armed regime could not be removed by the sheer force of protests. Foreign intervention was needed. People in Iran are not idiots. We don't think Trump or anyone is doing this for human rights only. We have to work with what we have. Every life lost matters beyond words, and we will get to mourning every single one that's passed away throughout the past few months.
With the death toll now over 1,000 and rising, many still appear to support the war, but it remains highly questionable whether this will be a trigger for ordinary Iranians to take back their country.
Our thanks to Ian Panel. Coming up, if you have questions about the war and its potential impact on your life, after the break, we'll try to answer some of them with one of our military experts. New fears of the fallout from the Middle East derailing global travel with spring break and summer vacation right around the corner. You may be weighing your travel options as global conflicts escalate. That's why ABC's Stephanie Ramos spoke with travel expert Clint Henderson with The Points Guy.
So should flyers be cautious right now if they're traveling overseas? What's your take?
Yeah, so basically use your best judgment. We are telling people at the Points Guide to probably avoid the Middle East if you can right now. I have a flight coming up through Abu Dhabi in a couple of weeks to South Africa. I'm not sure that trip's going to happen. So you got to be really weighing those things in your mind. But you can take some steps to get ahead of it. So the State Department has an enrollment program that's really easy, an online form you fill out. It puts you in touch with the embassy where you're going. That lets you keep in touch. Know the emergency phone numbers of the place you're going. In a lot of countries, it is 911, just like it is here in the U.S. You want to have a picture of your passport, and you want to know your airline record locator, because that's how the airline's going to look up your flights if things go sideways. So some common sense steps you can take. I still think it's probably perfectly fine to go to a place like Mexico, but this Middle East situation does not seem to be calming down. And so I would caution with Middle East travel right now.
Right, and thousands of travelers have already been affected by this war. Are there refunds available for those who are forced to change their plans?
Yeah, so the good news is you are entitled to a full refund if the airline cancels your ticket. So if the airline cancels and you decide not to take that trip, then you are owed a speedy refund to your original form of payment. So that's a good news. That's some protection. If you're just feeling uncomfortable and you want to reschedule the trip, most U.S. airlines will give you a trip credit for future travel if you decide to proactively cancel. So that's another piece of good news. The one cautionary note is don't book basic economy, because those rules do not apply if you booked basic economy tickets.
Those flights are usually pretty restrictive.
Right.
Partial government shutdown happening right now. That's also adding to the travel stress. What tips do you have for those worried about long security lines?
Yeah, I just did some reporting here in Miami. I'm at the airport and I went and checked out the security lines. The longest one I saw was about 25 minutes, so not too bad. But you just never know where this is going to pop up because it depends on sick calls. So keep an eye on your airport website, because that'll tell you a good idea of what the lines are like. But get clear, get pre-check, those kinds of things.
Our thanks to Stephanie for that. Questions over the war with Iran continue trending on search engines. Americans are curious about the war and the impact it could have on their lives. ABC News contributor and former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for the Middle East, Mick Mulroy, tried to provide some answers.
So a lot of these questions are about the government warning that Iran may be activating sleeper cells in the U.S. What are sleeper cells and how do they work, and what kind of threat could they pose? Those are the big questions we're getting.
Diane, generally speaking, that are operatives that are trained to do clandestine operations in another country, and in this case, our country. They get trained and inserted with the idea they won't do anything other than, support why they're there or cover story until they're activated. And once they're activated, then they carry out the very mission that they were trained for before they were eventually deployed. So that's what a sleeper cell is. Very concerning, of course. The FBI tries to identify these individuals, and if they can find them doing anything unlawful, charge them and get them out of the country. But of course, we don't know what we don't know, and there could be some in the United States, which is why I think there's such a high level of alert.
The draft is also trending after the White House press secretary didn't explicitly rule it out in a Fox News interview. I want to play you some of that moment.
I want to get your take about this idea of troops on the ground. Mothers out there are worried that we're going to have a draft, that they're going to see their sons get in and daughters get involved in this. What do you want to say about the president's plans for troops on the ground? As we know, it's been largely an air campaign up until now.
It has been, and it will continue to be, and President Trump wisely does not remove options off of the table. I know a lot of politicians like to do that quickly, but the president, as commander-in-chief, wants to continue to assess the success of this military operation.
Mick, the question Levitt was responding to there was also about boots on the ground in general, so it's not clear if she was talking about a draft. Now the White House is calling reports that it's not ruling out a draft made up. So what are the chances that we would see a draft in this country, and how would that work?
So, Diane, to start, I don't think there's a real chance that we're going to have a ground force go into Iran. We'd see it, of course. It would take far more than we did in Iraq, but we could actually do it with the current military. We wouldn't have to have a draft. Now, going to the point of the draft, the Military Selective Service Act requires males 18 and 25 to register. It doesn't mean they're conscripted. There'd have to be another law passed by Congress that would activate that. So essentially restart the lottery that was in it in 1973. So those are all very unlikely. So first of all, the active force we have now does not require that we have a draft to be able to do something like invade Iran. And even if that was the case, there's several steps that would have to happen that are all unlikely. Congress is very unlikely to pass a law restarting conscription in the draft.
People also want to know about Iran's capabilities, how many drones, missiles, and ships they have left, and how long they can hold out.
Though I think it's important to point out, even with the extent, the 5,000 plus in building strikes the U.S. and Israel has taken in Iran, there's always going to be some remnants. So the fact that they can still shoot a Shahed drone or a ballistic missile shouldn't necessarily be the standard that we're looking for. We have degraded them pretty substantially. And I think all the battle damage assessment that we're doing right now is why we don't really know when the end will come. It's likely to be 2, 3, maybe 4 weeks where the military can meet its objective if it's just focused on the strategic assets. I think that could happen, but it's unclear exactly how much Iran has left, and that's why we're continuing this campaign.
Our thanks to Mick Mulroy and Diane Macedo. And that is our show for this hour. I'm Linsey Davis. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks so much for streaming with us.